Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm actually chatting with you from my apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So it's a beautiful day here. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about smartphones and public health and the digital frontier. And part of what I'm going to talk to you about today is actually drawing from my new book. I'm a sociologist, a writer, and an editor, and I recently published this book that I'm showing you here on my screen called The Smartphone Society: Technology, Power, and Resistance in the New Gilded Age. So, thinking about our smartphones, actually this is an apt conversation in part because you might even be watching this talk on your smartphone. But if we think about this very strange moment that we're in, where millions, perhaps billions of us have been sent indoors by this terrible pandemic, I think it's really highlighted for many people, perhaps in a way that they weren't quite aware of before, what a deep relationship they have with their digital devices, particularly smartphones. And perhaps your relationship to your smartphone has become even stronger in the past couple months. And I think that if we think about this relationship with our digital devices, we might have mixed feelings. So, for example, I think many of us could quickly come up with some positive dynamics that are occurring as a result of our relationship with our smartphones. In the most basic sense, our smartphones are providing a really crucial source of information about this horrible pandemic, but also just what types of strategies our communities and governments are implementing to help quell the virus. It's also providing a really important lifeline to loved ones. And this is particularly important for people who are struggling with mental illness as a result of social isolation or illnesses that are being aggravated by social isolation, particularly the elderly and those struggling with mental health issues. So we can think about that. And also just for the rest of us, particularly younger people who are living alone, our smartphones and our digital connections are providing much needed entertainment and interaction. But at the same time, we can also certainly think about some of the maybe not so good things that are coming with our increased reliance on our digital devices. In particular, if we think about our connection with our devices in terms of information retrieval, certainly those who have a bit of a hard time putting down their smartphones might find themselves more attached than ever to their digital devices as we helplessly scroll through the news feed, looking at the case count of our city and our state and our country, and really kind of falling into these news holes where we're just reading, we already had this kind of 24-hour news cycle, but we might find ourselves being sucked in even worse than before, which might aggravate mental illness for some. So if we think about it could be good for some and not so good for others in terms of our addiction to our smartphones. And we might also not necessarily be retrieving accurate information or getting a clear sense of what's actually happening around us from the types of news articles and stories that we hear. You might have read recently that approximately half of the sort of traffic and accounts tweeting about the coronavirus are likely to be generated by bots. So you're seeing these threads and conversations happening on Twitter about the coronavirus, but researchers at Carnegie Mellon suggest that about half of these are not conversations that are coming from real people. But today I'd like to talk to you about a slightly different way of thinking about our devices, and also a sort of broader topic of concern, which is this question of public health and smartphones. And in particular, the very rapid uptake and implementation, this is happening in real time, of countries and companies often working in sort of public-private partnerships around the world to actually use our smartphones as a way to quell the coronavirus. So I think that this is a pressing issue, not least because it really highlights some of the tensions between privacy and public health, and also the tensions inherent in our relationship with our digital devices and the types of surveillance that could be implemented at this time, in the name of keeping us safe, but in a way that's not entirely clear. And I think that this is one of the overwhelming kind of dynamics that me personally, as I try to get a clear picture of what governments and companies around the world are doing in terms of using our smartphones and the data that we generate with them in order to create apps or enforce quarantines and implement a variety of measures to try to quell the virus outbreak. It's not entirely clear what actually is being done, how our data is being used, and your average person, even community groups and state governments are not really a part of this conversation or allowing for an open conversation about what measures we think should be implemented and what measures we're not so sure about. So if we think about some of the strategies that governments are using, I put this slide up here. Dave Gershgorn over at 1.0 made this nice map where he just said, just a snapshot, right? We say at least 30 countries are ramping up surveillance to combat the coronavirus. And we see a wide variety of strategies being implemented around the world. So one of the ways that our smartphones are being used is in quarantine enforcement, as I mentioned just a minute ago. So if we think about a place like Taiwan, they implemented an electronic fence model where your smartphone is essentially acting like an electronic ankle monitor for people who are under house arrest. If you've been asked to quarantine at home in Taiwan, you are not allowed to actually walk out of designated areas, which your phone will police. And if your phone turns off for some reason, the police will pay you a visit to make sure that you are still in your apartment. There was a story in the newspaper about a student who fell asleep and his phone died, and he woke up to the police at his door because they wanted to see whether he was actually honoring home quarantine. Another interesting example of how phones are being used was in Poland. People who were asked to quarantine at home for 14 days by their government were required actually to check in numerous times a day by photographing themselves, submitting a selfie through an app. And if they didn't, again, the local authorities would show up at the door to make sure that they were actually there and honoring quarantine. These are just a couple different examples. We can also think about how our smartphones are being used in combination with broader data sets to monitor how people are moving in larger areas and what their access should be to public transportation, businesses, grocery stores, and residential buildings. One of the most elaborate systems was set up in China in a partnership between China and Alibaba, which is one of the biggest tech companies in China. And what Alibaba did was access through its own databases and in partnership with the Chinese government, a whole multi-scaled set of data where they created city by city algorithms to actually police where individuals could go based on where they lived and their own personal history. So each person was required to download an app, and then at whether they wanted to enter the train station or enter the grocery store or an apartment building, they would have to actually scan a QR code on their phone, and only those with a green light were allowed to proceed. This was a city-by-city system, and it has been implemented in different ways. It's not a sort of top-down, uniform system everywhere in China. But the system now is in place, and even though it's kind of been sort of scaled back as the virus there has been quelled, it can quickly be called up to be used later, which is very interesting.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below, or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.